Hey everyone, and welcome to this deep dive, where we're going to be tackling some pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah, fascinating stuff there.
We're diving into an excerpt from Ignorance versus Intelligence, The Battle Shaping Humanity. And let me tell you, this is not exactly light reading material.
No, it's a real thinker.
It makes you wonder how, as humans, we can achieve such amazing things.
Right, like sending rovers to Mars.
Exactly. And yet at the same time,
Fall for some pretty out there beliefs.
put it mildly, yeah.
What I find really interesting is how the source digs into that very paradox, that contradiction.
Yeah.
It goes way beyond, just not knowing things.
Just being uninformed.
Right. It explores how ignorance can often be a deliberate rejection of knowledge that's right there in front of you.
Choosing to stay in the dark, even when the light's shining right on it.
Exactly, especially when that light might reveal something we don't want to see.
Like, it's not just missing information, it's almost like clinging to beliefs.
Even when they've been proven wrong.
Yeah. How can that even be a thing?
Well, the source even suggests that this kind of stubborn ignorance,
Stubborn is a good word for it.
it might have actually been an advantage for our ancestors way back when.
Really?
Think about it. Imagine you're living in a small, isolated tribe thousands of years ago.
Okay.
Trusting the group, even if they're wrong about something, could have been the difference between life or death.
I guess so.
Because questioning the tribe, questioning their beliefs could have gotten you kicked out.
Oh, yeah, I see.
And back then, that basically meant a death sentence.
So better to go along with the crowd, even if they're...
Spouting complete nonsense.
Right. Even if it's totally wrong.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it?
It is. But then things get even more, I don't know,
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah.
Today we have technology that can spread information so fast.
Lightning speed.
And that includes accurate stuff
Oh, absolutely.
and, totally bogus stuff.
The fake news problem.
Exactly. And it seems like that ancient instinct, that need to trust the group, the herd mentality, is now being exploited in the digital age.
Big time. The source talks about social media algorithms,
Oh, yeah, those things.
They're designed to keep us scrolling, keep us engaged.
Hooks.
Hooked is the word, but not necessarily informed.
Right. So it's not about accuracy.
Not always. Often, it's the loudest, most outrageous voices that get amplified the most.
Whether they're right or wrong.
Doesn't seem to matter.
It's like that whole illusory truth effect, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The more you hear something repeated, even if it's absurd, the more you start to think, well, maybe there's something to it.
It's like our brains are wired to believe whatever's repeated the loudest and most often.
Almost like a broken record.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where the real danger lies, according to the source.
Okay.
Because this effect, combined with just the sheer volume of information we're bombarded with every day, it makes us incredibly vulnerable to manipulation.
Vulnerable is a good word.
It's not just a lack of knowledge anymore.
Right, it's deeper than that.
It's about actively choosing to believe things that confirm our existing biases.
Even when there's tons of evidence that contradicts those beliefs.
Mountains of evidence sometimes.
It's almost like we're hardwired to seek out information that just reinforces what we already think.
Even if those thoughts are way off base.
Totally off base. But you know what's interesting? The source doesn't let intelligence off the hook either.
Not at all.
It's not all, rainbows and sunshine with being smart.
Yeah, definitely not. Intelligence can be used for good or bad just as easily.
And the source brings up a pretty telling example. The atomic bomb.
Oh, yeah, good point.
This amazing feat of human intelligence
Absolutely.
that resulted in a weapon with unbelievable destructive power.
It's a sobering thought.
So it's not a simple case of intelligence being the hero and ignorance being the villain.
It's way more complicated than that.
Much more nuanced. In fact, the source argues that ignorance and intelligence can feed off of each other.
In some really scary ways.
And that can be really dangerous.
Think about politicians twisting scientific data to fit their agenda.
Or corporations spreading misinformation to protect their profits.
These are cases where intelligence is being used to exploit ignorance.
It's kind of a terrifying thought if you really think about it.
It is, and it brings this whole discussion back to each of us, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We all have our biases.
We all have those blind spots.
We tend to gravitate towards information that confirms what we already believe.
Even if we're wrong.
Even if we're way off.
We can't just blame those people out there.
No, we're all part of this.
The source reminds us that this battle between ignorance and intelligence.
It's happening inside each of us.
That's a good point.
Understanding our own cognitive biases is crucial, but it's tough work.
It's not easy to admit when we're wrong.
No, it's not. But what about hope?
Okay, there's got to be some hope here, right?
The source does mention that our brains are adaptable.
So we can change.
If we're aware of our biases, can we train ourselves to be more open to new information, less likely to fall for all the misinformation out there?
That's the million-dollar question.
It is, and one we're going to dig deeper into. But first, there's a really surprising weapon against ignorance that the source brings up.
What's that?
Storytelling.
Storytelling.
Yeah, stories. It might not be what you'd expect, but the source makes a strong case for their power. It's really fascinating how the source highlights this whole idea of storytelling.
Yeah, stories.
We tend to think of intelligence as all about, facts and figures, hard data.
Logic and reasoning.
Right, exactly. But the thing is, humans, we're wired for narratives.
We love a good story.
We connect with stories on a much deeper level, an emotional level.
Yeah, that's true.
And that can make stories incredibly powerful tools for understanding complex ideas.
Even changing minds, right?
Exactly. So maybe instead of just throwing facts at people, we need to find ways to weave those facts into compelling narratives.
Is that what the source is suggesting? Like, tell a story with the facts.
That's exactly it. A well-told story can kind of sneak past our intellectual defenses.
Our skepticism.
Yeah, our skepticism, our resistance to new ideas.
Okay, I see.
And it reaches us on a deeper level, a place where we're more open to change.
So instead of just arguing with someone, tell them a story that illustrates your point.
Exactly. Think about the classic stories we all grew up with, the myths and legends, fairy tales.
Yeah, those stick with you.
They do, don't they? And they often contain these profound truths about human nature, about the world.
Hidden messages.
But they convey those truths through engaging characters and plots that pull us in.
You get caught up in the story.
Right. So a good story can make us feel something.
And those feelings can make us more open.
More receptive to new information, new perspectives.
That's really interesting. But the source also points out a big challenge we face today, right?
Yeah, a big one.
Technology, it's like this double-edged sword.
Definitely double-edged sword. We think of technology as this tool for progress.
Advancement, innovation.
Right, all of that. But it can also be used to spread ignorance.
And misinformation.
On a massive scale.
Yeah, that's the downside.
Social media platforms, for example, they can create these echo chambers.
Where you only see what you already agree with.
Exactly. You're only exposed to information that reinforces your existing views.
It's like being in a bubble.
It is a bubble. And those algorithms, the ones that are designed to keep us clicking and scrolling.
And keep us hooked.
They can actually trap us in this cycle of confirmation bias.
So you just keep seeing more and more of what you already believe.
And less of anything that challenges your view.
So you end up in these online spaces where everyone agrees with each other.
And any dissenting voices are silenced or drowned out.
It's like you never have to confront any uncomfortable truths.
Or challenge your own beliefs.
Yeah, that's a problem. And the source specifically talks about climate change.
Oh, yeah, that's a prime example.
It's a huge issue.
Despite all the scientific evidence, all the consensus on the reality and urgency of climate change,
It's overwhelming.
there are still these powerful interests out there, actively spreading misinformation,
Trying to create doubt.
sowing doubt, delaying action.
And they're really good at it.
They're using sophisticated tactics to manipulate public opinion.
To get people on their side.
And they're exploiting the very tools of intelligence, technology, science, communication.
So it's not just a lack of information, it's
The deliberate distortion of information.
using intelligence to deceive and manipulate.
It's a scary thought.
It is scary. But the source does highlight some positive developments too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are people and organizations out there who are actively fighting back
Against the misinformation.
against the misinformation, trying to promote a more informed public discourse.
What are some of the examples the source mentions?
Well, there's been this rise of fact-checking organizations.
Oh yeah, like those websites that debunk fake news.
Exactly. They're dedicated to debunking false claims and holding those who spread misinformation accountable.
Calling them out.
Calling them out, making them back up their claim.
Okay, that's good. What else?
Well, there are researchers studying how misinformation spreads online,
So we can understand it better.
trying to understand the psychology of it, the mechanisms that make us susceptible to it.
It's like figuring out the enemy's tactics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there are educators who are focusing more and more on critical thinking skills.
Teaching people how to think for themselves.
Exactly. Teaching students how to evaluate information sources, identify biases, construct sound arguments.
So it's not a hopeless situation.
Not at all. There's a growing awareness of the problem.
And people are developing strategies to combat it.
We're fighting back.
That's good to hear. But it seems like the source is also making a bigger point, right?
Yeah, it's not just about fighting misinformation.
It's about something more fundamental.
It's about recognizing the limitations of knowledge itself.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the source makes this really important distinction between intelligence and wisdom.
Okay, that's interesting.
Intelligence is about acquiring and processing information.
Like being smart, knowing a lot of facts.
Right. But wisdom is about applying that knowledge in a way that's thoughtful, ethical, beneficial.
So it's not just about what you know, it's about how you use it.
It's about understanding the bigger picture, the interconnectedness of things, the long-term consequences of our actions.
So wisdom is more than just being smart.
It's about being wise.
But how do we actually cultivate wisdom? Is that something you can learn?
That's the age-old question.
Right.
The source seems to suggest that wisdom is something we can develop.
Like a skill you can practice.
It's about cultivating certain habits of mind and heart, integrating knowledge with experience and compassion.
So it's not just about thinking, it's also about feeling.
Exactly. It's about the whole person, the head and the heart.
Can you give me some specific examples? Like, what are some of those habits of mind and heart we can cultivate?
Well, the source highlights 3 key principles that we've already talked about a bit: curiosity, compassion, and collaboration.
Those sound familiar.
And they're not just buzzwords, they're essential ingredients for cultivating wisdom.
Okay, well, let's break those down a bit. We talked about curiosity being the antidote to ignorance, but how does it help us become wiser?
Curiosity is that driving force behind learning and growth.
It's what makes us want to learn new things.
Exactly. It's about being open to new ideas, questioning assumptions, seeking deeper understanding.
So the more curious we are, the more we learn.
And the more we understand the complexities of the world, the interconnectedness of things.
That's how we start to see the bigger picture.
Right. That deeper understanding is a key part of wisdom
Okay, so curiosity keeps our minds engaged.
and helps us avoid getting stuck in rigid ways of thinking.
Makes sense. And what about compassion? How does compassion fit into this whole idea of wisdom?
Compassion is what allows us to connect with others on a much deeper level.
To see things from their point of view.
Exactly. To understand their perspectives, empathize with their struggles, recognize our shared humanity.
So it's about breaking down those barriers between us and them.
Right. It helps us overcome the biases and prejudices that can cloud our judgment.
And prevent us from seeing the world clearly.
Exactly. Compassion helps us make wiser choices, choices that benefit everyone, not just ourselves.
And finally, there's collaboration. We talked about how important it was for eradicating smallpox. But how does collaboration help us fight ignorance in general?
Well, collaboration is about recognizing that none of us has all the answers.
We need to work together.
We need to be able to share our knowledge, our perspectives, our skills, our resources.
To tackle those big problems.
Especially in this age of information overload.
It's too much for any one person to handle.
It's crucial to be able to work together to sift through all the noise and find the truth.
So it's about tapping into the power of collective intelligence.
That's a great way to put it, recognizing that we can achieve far more together.
Than we ever could on our own.
Exactly.
But collaboration can be tough, right? Especially in a world that feels so divided.
Absolutely. It's a constant challenge.
How do we even begin to bridge those divides? Where do we start?
I think it starts with those same principles. Curiosity, compassion, a willingness to collaborate.
We keep coming back to those.
They're fundamental. It's about being open to hearing different perspectives, even if they challenge our own beliefs.
Even if we don't like what we're hearing.
Even then, it's about seeking common ground and working together towards shared goals.
Even if we don't agree on everything.
Right. Sometimes we have to agree to disagree.
But still find a way to move forward together.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our differences can actually be a source of strength.
That's an interesting thought.
We can learn and grow from engaging with people who see the world differently than we do.
Makes sense. And it's about believing that a better world is possible.
Absolutely.
A world where intelligence is guided by wisdom, where compassion triumphs over division, and where collaboration fuels progress for the benefit of all.
That's a powerful vision.
It is.
And it's one that each of us can contribute to.
So what we do matters.
The choices we make, the conversations we have, the actions we take.
It all adds up.
All of these things can help tilt the scales towards a brighter future.
So to our listeners out there, what can we do? What's our takeaway?
I think it's about recognizing that this battle between ignorance and intelligence isn't some distant, abstract concept.
It's happening all around us.
It's happening right here, right now, in our everyday lives.
We're all part of it.
And each of us has a role to play.
What can we do? specifically?
Keep asking those tough questions.
Don't just accept things at face value.
Keep challenging your own assumptions.
Don't be afraid to be wrong.
Keep seeking out diverse perspectives.
Don't just stay in your echo chamber.
And keep believing that a better world is possible.
Don't give up hope.
Because together, we can make a difference.
Okay, we're back and ready to wrap up our deep dives into ignorance versus intelligence. Whew, we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah, it's been a real journey exploring these ideas.
It's kind of mind-bending when you really start thinking about it.
It is, isn't it? But one thing that really struck me is how the source frames this whole thing as an ongoing battle.
Not like a one-time event.
Right. It's not like we reach some point where ignorance is defeated and then we're all good.
It's more like a constant struggle.
Exactly. Both ignorance and intelligence are part of what makes us human, and this tension between them, it's probably always going to be there.
So it's not about wiping out ignorance completely.
No, I don't think that's realistic or even desirable.
Why not?
Well, because some level of ignorance might actually be necessary for learning and growth.
How so?
Think about it. If we knew everything, there'd be no need to explore, to question, to discover.
I guess that's true. There'd be no mystery left.
Right. So it's not about eradicating ignorance entirely.
It's more about managing it.
Yeah, finding ways to keep it in check, making sure that wisdom is what guides our actions.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not a winner-take-all situation.
Not at all. It's about finding a balance, recognizing that even intelligence can be dangerous.
If it's not used wisely.
Exactly. We've seen that throughout history, haven't we?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of examples of intelligence being used for destructive purposes.
Think of it like this. Intelligence gives us the tools to build incredibly powerful technologies.
Like the atomic bomb, for instance.
Right, exactly. But wisdom helps us use those technologies responsibly.
For the good of humanity. For the planet.
It's about understanding the long-term consequences of our actions.
Thinking about the bigger picture.
Exactly. Making choices that benefit not just ourselves, but future generations as well.
So it's about more than just being smart.
It's about being wise.
But how do we actually do that? How do we cultivate wisdom in our everyday lives?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. It's easy to talk about wisdom in these abstract terms, but what does it actually look like in practice?
Well, the source offers some really practical guidance here.
Okay, I'm all ears.
It comes back to those 3 key principles we discussed earlier: curiosity, compassion, and collaboration.
Those keep popping up.
They do, don't they? And that's because they're not just feel-good slogans, they're actual habits of mind that we can develop and strengthen.
So we can practice being more curious, more compassionate, more collaborative.
Exactly. These are skills we can cultivate through conscious effort and practice.
Okay, let's unpack those a bit more. We talked about curiosity being the antidote to ignorance, but how does it actually make us wiser?
Well, curiosity is all about being open to newer information, questioning assumptions, actively seeking out different perspectives.
It's that thirst for knowledge, that desire to understand the world around us.
Exactly. And the more we learn, the more we understand the complexities of the world, the interconnectedness of everything.
We start to see the bigger picture.
Right. That deeper understanding is a key ingredient in wisdom.
Okay, so curiosity keeps our minds engaged, helps us avoid getting stuck in rigid ways of thinking.
It keeps us flexible, adaptable, open to new possibilities.
Makes sense. Now, what about compassion? How does that contribute to wisdom?
Compassion is about recognizing our shared humanity.
Even with those who are different from us.
Especially with those who are different from us, even those we disagree with.
It's about understanding where they're coming from, right?
Exactly. Trying to see the world through their eyes, even if their views seem wrong or even harmful to us.
That could be tough, though, especially when you feel strongly about something.
Oh, it definitely can be. But compassion helps us break down those barriers of judgment and prejudice.
Those things that can cloud our judgment and prevent us from seeing things clearly.
Right. Compassion helps us make wiser choices. Choices that benefit everyone, not just ourselves.
It's about thinking about the well-being of others, not just our own self-interest.
Exactly. And finally, there's collaboration. We talked about how important it was for eradicating smallpox.
Yeah, that was an amazing achievement.
It really was, and it shows what we can accomplish when we work together towards a common goal.
But how does collaboration help us fight ignorance more broadly?
Well, collaboration is about recognizing that none of us has all the answers.
We all have our blind spots.
We do. And we need to be able to share our knowledge, our perspectives, our skills, our resources.
To fill in those gaps.
Exactly. Especially in this age of information overload, it's so crucial to be able to work together, to sift through all the noise and find the truth.
So collaboration is about tapping into the power of collective intelligence.
That's a great way to put it. Recognizing that we can achieve far more together than we ever could on our own.
The whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. But collaboration can be tough, especially in a world that often feels so divided and polarized.
It's hard to find common ground when everyone seems to be retreating to their own echo chambers.
It is a challenge, but I think it all comes back to those same principles: curiosity, compassion, and a willingness to collaborate.
So we need to be curious about those who are different from us.
Ask questions, try to understand their perspectives,
We need to have compassion for them, even when we disagree.
recognize their humanity, their struggles, their hopes and fears.
And we need to be willing to collaborate, to work together towards shared goals,
Even if we don't agree on everything.
even if it's messy and uncomfortable.
Because that's how progress happens. It's through those difficult conversations, those messy collaborations, that we can find solutions that benefit everyone.
So it's not about ignoring our differences or pretending they don't exist.
It's about recognizing that our differences can actually be a source of strength,
That's an interesting thought.
because we can learn and grow from those differences.
And we can expand our understanding of the world and ourselves.
And ultimately, that's what wisdom is all about, isn't it?
It's about seeing the bigger picture, connecting the dots, understanding how everything fits together.
And using that understanding to make the world a better place.
That's a pretty inspiring vision.
It is, and it's a vision that each of us can contribute to.
So, what's our takeaway for our listeners today?
Keep those minds curious, those hearts compassionate, and those spirits collaborative.
Don't be afraid to ask tough questions, to challenge your own assumptions, to seek out different perspectives.
And keep believing that a better world is possible.
Yeah.
Because it is.
We just have to work for it, together.
Exactly. The battle between ignorance and intelligence continues, but together, we can make sure that wisdom prevails.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into ignorance versus intelligence. It's been a thought-provoking journey, and we hope you'll continue exploring these ideas long after the episode is over.
Always keep learning, keep growing, and keep questioning.
And we'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration. Until then, stay curious out there.